Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Georgia-Alabama Sports Live Show on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. And we got a great show in store for you today. We're going to be dropping our weekly ratings. We're going to be talking about what happened in the high school scene around the Tri-City area, touch on a little college basketball, and then we'll get out of here. We won't talk any NFL. I know there's games happening right now. There's games that Lions made it to the NFC Championship game, but we'll talk about all that and more on our Wednesday show because Bobby Z, formerly of the Press Box, will join us to talk NFL playoffs. So looking forward to that. But Richard, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Thrift. I'm just happy to be here. I'm really excited about these rankings. I know we talked about it. I know everybody out there watching is really anticipating our new rankings for the week.
All right, Richard, before we do our ratings, not rankings, remember ratings.
Ratings.
We have to tell people what that means. But before we put up the ratings, are the ratings up right now? We're not having them up yet, Chris, right? And by the way, shout out to Chris, who is the ultimate producer and the guy that, again, just takes us to the next level. You saw the graphic before you came in. If you don't have a Chris Gates and a Toy Gar, good luck getting in the live streaming business and being successful. And they're few and far between to find those type of guys. And we're lucky not only to have one, but we have two of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just unbelievable, Richard, and yourself. And I'm so proud of what we're building here and what we continue to grow on. But with that said, let's talk about some of the games that happened this past week. We'll start with Tuesday as Springwood and Glenwood played. The girls dominated the Springwood girls, who are decent. They were 13-3. Could be a team that plays in the Final Four, but Glenwood, obviously the favorite to win in 3A in the AISA, the state championship. TK Davis had another double-double. She was dominant. Haley Powellmore, excellent passing and vision, especially in transition. And then, of course, Anna Grace Griggs, who is just coming to her own as one of the best post players that we got in our area, even with her size. But the boys came up short. They were down as many as 20 and then came back and lost in overtime by 2 points. They had a chance to win at the end. Swag at the end before overtime. Jadarian Holloway, who they call Swag, missed a floater. Obviously got hacked. No call. But just a heartbreaking loss. And it's okay in the sense of you still play them again. It's only the regular season. And then Springwood then beat Lee Scott this week. So right now in the AISA, the number one team is Bessemer, who beat Springwood and Lee Scott. Number two team is Springwood. 3 Lee Scott, 4 is Glenwood. So that's probably going to be your Final Four. So Glenwood's going to have to, just like last year, be the underdog to win. But we'll start there Tuesday. Glenwood coming up short. On the boys' side, the girls, they keep trucking along as now they're over the 20-win plateau.
Well, Glenwood will travel up to Lynette this Tuesday to play Springwood in the rematch. You talk about the girls just dominating. They've really been winning every single game, and they're on quite the winning streak. As far as the boys, playing short against Springwood, with Jadarian Holiday fouling out.
And Levi Pender, being hurt. He's injured. Yeah. He's out for a few weeks. He hopes to return this week.
Hopefully, he'll be back this week because this week is going to be a big week not only for the boys but also for the girls because playing Springwood on the road and then hosting Lee Scott Academy on Thursday before we get into region tournament play. This is the final week of the regular season in the AISA, and both Glenwood teams want to finish strong.
Yeah, and Valiant Cross is also in their region.
Right.
This is Springwood. They beat Valiant Cross. They beat at Glenwood by 3 in overtime, then beat Lee Scott by 11. And then their last 3 games are at home. So they're 6-1 in the region. They could tie with Lee Scott and be in first place if they went out. On the flip side, Glenwood's 5-3. They're going to probably need some help, and they're definitely going to have to win these next 2 games if they want to win the region. Going to Lynette against Springwood, it's going to be tough. Hopefully Levi Pender can come back. A lot of silly turnovers, and I said this on the broadcast. If Glenwood didn't get down by 20, they're probably going to win that game. And I know Coach Perdue, love this team's willingness to not quit and come back, but you can't get that big of a hole in the first half and then expect to come back and win. So they got Springwood and they got Lee Scott. Those are the last 2 games. They're 19-7. They'd like to be 21-7 heading into region play next week. But Glenwood, boys and girls, on Tuesday. Richard, I know you got the scores. We'll go through these quickly. You don't have to touch on all of them. Just touch on some of the big wins as we talk about the rest of the teams, and then we'll get into ratings, what happened around the area.
Absolutely. We talked about, like on Thursday, Northgate ends up beating Harris County, the boys, but that was a close win for the Harris County girls. What Coach Stephanie Ramsey Dunn is doing. They had 3 games in 3 days. Northgate beat them, or they beat Northgate by 2. They were able to beat Drew. Get this score, Thrift, 56-7.
Wow.
And they beat the Shaw Lady Raiders. Rick Beach and I called that game up at the county on Saturday. And Tiara Tucker got her 30 points, but really, that trio of Alana Coulter, Brooke Bass, and Janiyah Broom, what Coach Ramsey Dunn has, they are looking really good. And they played Northside. I know Northside's a little down this year, but it's a rivalry game up at the county. They play on Tuesday. And same with, I believe the boys matchup is going to determine who's probably going to be the number 3 seed, because you got Northside and Harris County both beat Drew, and so right now Northside and Harris County both 1 and 2, both tied for 3rd place.
By the way, I just want to throw this in there talking about Glenwood real quick, and great job for Harris County. Coach Dunn, I really like that team. I think they're going to make a Final Four, and they've been to the Final Four before underneath her. Lee Scott went 1 and 2 last week. They lost at Springwood and at Valiant Cross. So that means, looking at the region, that gives them 2 losses in region play. And in their region right now, Glenwood is technically in 4th place. Springwood is number 1 with 6-1, then Lee Scott, then Valiant, then Glenwood. And then on the other side, really it's just Bessemer. It's a 5-team race in the AISA 3A. But Glenwood, they may not make it. If they're the 4 seed and they're on region, that means they'll play number 1 Bessemer, and if they lose in the Elite 8, they won't even make it to the Final Four. So these next 2 games are crucial for Glenwood, and then in that region tournament, which is going to be a lot of fun, we'll be there for that. Springwood, Lee Scott, Valiant Cross, and Glenwood all playing in the same region, all having 17 wins or more, and Lee Scott, Valiant, and Springwood are 17-4, 19-4, and 18-4. We also broadcasted on Friday, Carver and Monroe. Carver girls beat Monroe girls, as now Carver girls are undefeated and number 1 in the region. And the boys came up short. Coach Pembroke says, I got a really good team. We made some mistakes. We'll get it fixed, and we'll be right back where we need to be. And that get back's going to be even better, going to Monroe and beating them. But Coach Huff Power and the Monroe Golden Tornadoes, including Justin Burns, one of the top players in the state, they're a good program, and they're ranked number 1 in their region, and they're ranked top 3 in the state for a reason, Richard. But Carver, just not enough firepower on Friday night. They came up short. The boys, girls won.
Yeah, it was just an offensive put out by the Monroe Golden Tornadoes, and we caught that game on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. It was just one of those matchups. You talked about Justin Burns. He had like 6 blocks, but he had some high-flying dunks. One that just was on a highlight reel, 90-71. Anytime you put up 71, you think that that's good enough to win. But with Monroe putting up 90, just an incredible effort. They're 15-3, but they're 3 losses. Twice to Lee County and once to Westover. And it's the first loss of the season for the Carver Tigers. But they'll bounce back. They got a big region game next Friday against Columbus.
And PSA out there, it's okay to lose a game. I know they're undefeated and they lost, and now everybody's saying, well, Carver, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that. Maybe you need you're 16-1. You got 1 loss. That means the other 16 times everything you were doing worked. And I know Coach Pembroke, who's won a state championship at Spencer, he's doing a great job rebuilding the Carver program. He knows what he's doing, ladies and gentlemen. Let him do his job. So Coach Pembroke has got them rocking and rolling. By the way, I want to shout out to Adam Denson, who's watching right now. He updates and live streams middle school basketball around the area. His son, who plays at Fort. And by the way, transitioning into middle school basketball, we will be live streaming the middle school semifinal games for the girls. That's February the 7th. The boys, that's February the 8th. That's Wednesday and Thursday. And then the championship game, February the 10th. And it's going to be exclusively on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Jeff Battles, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity. He reached out, asked if we'd be interested. Said 100%, would love to be able to have this opportunity to live stream. We were even thinking about doing it anyway, so we appreciate Jeff and them allowing us to do this. And we're looking forward, Richard, to doing those games coming up here in a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and do it. Let's throw up the girls, if we can. Chris, let's throw up the girls' ratings first. All right, and when we look at the girls' ratings, Richard, and when we say ratings, we go off of talent, just like we did football. Talent, your schedule in your league, okay, who you played, respected to your league, but also to a certain extent, if you played a cream cut puff schedule and you play in a lower league, it's harder for us to put you up higher just because you won a lot of games. So your schedule's got to be tough. Your path to the state championship. How good of a chance do you have in your league to winning it all? No matter what the league is, what kind of chance do you have? And then we go overall talent and their coaching and everything else. There's a lot of criteria. So we don't just go off of head-to-head because, like we said, there's many times we expect public to beat private in head-to-head. A little bit different, though, in basketball. I will say that.
Right.
There's not many teams. I don't think I would put any team favor over Pacelli. That Central game, I think, obviously many people would think Central would win or Carver. But I put Pacelli up there with anyone. So it's not just that. But that's not how we want to do it when we do our ratings. I know Max Preps has their own way. We have ours. So looking at the ratings right now, Richard, let's start from number 10. Calvary, they're 8-8. They got a big win against Konos last week. They did lose to Creekside. And Creekside is the litmus test for the gaps. The boys and girls are both went undefeated last year in one state, and they're the favorite to win it this year. And both Calvary boys and girls lost to Creekside. But I like this team. And I think this team has just as good a chance as anyone else other than Creekside of making it to the state championship. And then you never know what could happen when you get there. But they are a number 10 team, Richard.
I like Calvary Christian too, and they did defeat Southland Academy, which we saw in the Border Wars. They defeated them on Saturday. They play Ballard Christian. That's a non-region game. Konos Academy next Friday. That's going to be up in Fayetteville. And then the game that we should have on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, February the 2nd against Creekside, the defending GAPS champions. And, that was tough having to go play Creekside on the road. But this team is just going to continue to get better. They got a very special 8th grader who's one of the top scorers in the Tri-City area, Michaela Reed. The senior leadership of Lily Miller, players like Emily Christarfin. And they're just continuing just to get better under Coach Norton's leadership. And I like where Calvary's at right now.
From number 10 to number 9, Spencer, they're 11-6. And don't go off just record either because there's been teams that played really tough schedules. Again, there's a lot to factor into it. But the reason we have them behind Shaw is because they lost to Shaw in the Christmas tournament in third place game. But the Burke girls, they had a phenomenal week last week. They're still number 1 team in their region, and I expect them to win maybe a region championship this year in 2A. Spencer at 11-6. Coach Tinch got a really good team over there.
They did lose to Central Macon, but they are undefeated in the region for the girls, and that was a tough loss. They still got some games they got to face where they can get a good position and maybe get a number 2 seed going into the region. But I like what Coach Tinch is doing. And
you're right, and they are 5-1, Richard. I'm glad you corrected me. Central of Macon is 7-0. Jordan 4-3. So right now, the Jordan Red Jackets and Shireen Cobb, shout out to her, could make the playoffs this year, and that would make me happier than anything seeing them. But Central making the number 1 seed, so Spencer obviously tough loss, losing to them this past week, but still 5-1, and they dominated Cairo on Saturday by 30 points, and they still have to play, at Central later on this season, February the 6th. So that will be, I guess, to decide the region there. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer is just going to continue just doing what they do. And, this is the same team that went to the second round of the playoffs. No one expected them to win a playoff game last year.
But how about the Burke sisters, 13.6 and 13.1?
Yeah.
And Malaysia Dice with 10.9. I like this team a lot. And 5-1, 11-6. Second in the region, first, either way, you get to host a playoff game. How about that, Richard?
Yeah, and if you look at their record, 11-6, but they had to play Harris County, and they lost twice to Harris County. I mean, if you look at their losses, they lost to Shaw in the Christmas tournament. They lost to Lassiter, which is a 6A school in Marietta. They lost to Hardaway. So yes, they're 11-6, but those 6 losses are to teams that are either higher in a reclassification or are really one of the top teams in their region.
Number 8 is the Shaw Raiders, who are 1-3 in their region. Couple tough losses.
Absolutely.
Hardaway, obviously, and then Bainbridge. They're 1-3 right now. They're the 4 seed. They just lost to Bainbridge. I like what Coach Crowell's got, and obviously Tiara Tucker is a phenomenal athlete. Put up 30 against
Right.
Harris County. I mean, the girl can score. She's going to be a great player at the college level. They lost to Westover, who is not in their region. Lost to Hardaway, and then lost to Bainbridge. So Westover is in their region. Excuse me. So I don't know what I was just looking at on Max Preps because I was clicking on their region, Richard, and Westover's 3-1. So
Well, they do host Bainbridge.
There's a fumble by me in wrong sport. My name's not Josh Allen. For all the Bills fans out there. The quarterback that fumbles more than anyone. That joke just went right over Richard's head, and it's probably a terrible joke anyway. But 1-3 in the region. Lost to Bainbridge by 1. Lost to Hardaway and Westover, who are the number 1 and number 2 seeds. So they play Bainbridge at home this upcoming week, Richard, next Saturday. They got a whole week to practice to get better. I think Coach Crowell, they get a win against Bainbridge, they beat Cairo again, and maybe Westover, even if they lose to Westover and Hardaway, they'll be the 3 seed heading in a region tournament, and maybe they can stay the 3 seed and get an upset in the playoffs. But Shaw, 11-9, they are number 8. Moving on from Shaw is Smith Station. Richard, 13-2. What do you got to say about the Smith Station Panthers as they come in at our number 7 ranking?
Well, their 2 losses are in the region to Auburn and Central, but they did beat Opelika. I mean, I look at their record, and I'll be honest with you, Thrift, we have not seen Smith Station on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We were going to live stream, and we hope to live stream some Smith Station games, but we haven't seen them this year, and we're just going off of the record. I had to drop them in the rankings. I mean, because they did lose 2 games. I mean, we had them high in their rankings. The first rankings that I did, I had them like number 4 because they were undefeated. But you get into region play, and right now, Central and Auburn are top in the region, and it's looking like they're going to be in 3rd place. And there's only 4 teams in the region, so that's why we dropped them.
And they lost at both Auburn and Central at home, and they played both of them on the road this week. Those are probably going to be 2 losses. But Smith Station still having a good season for them, and they're ranked number 7. Number 6, I honestly would have liked them to be a little bit higher, but I think we just came because the other teams are so good.
I moved them up. We flopped. Last week we had Smith Station 6, Pacelli 7. I moved Pacelli up to 6.
And honestly, I probably could have moved them up in the top 5. The Pacelli Vikings, who were 10-4, big wins this past week against Westfield, against Douglas County. Just did our coaches show with Bryant, and I like his team a lot. And I looked at the GIAA. They're up there with about 2 other teams that could win it all this year in 4A. And that would be a first in Pacelli Vikings history. When it comes to Lady Vikings, 10-4, ranked number 6. And their X factor, Tamaya Ransom. 11 points, 13 rebounds the other day. Having that glue guy that does all the little things right, rebounds, plays defense, comes off the bench, does whatever you ask him to, doesn't really care about the scoring, will score if you need him to. Tamaya Ransom being the glue X factor, and then you throw in Grace Smith and Michaela Hosley and Kamora Jones, and then that makes what we have now, which is a team that's 10-4. Big week this week. Got Brookstone and Heritage, but they're coming in at number 6.
Yeah, and right now the team that's above them, I mean,
you can talk about them, Richard.
We could have put Pacelli above Central, but you look at
honestly, I wanted to, but I think we decided and came into agreement to put Pacelli 6. If Pacelli wins out this week, which beats Heritage at Heritage and then Brookstone, you'll see the Pacelli Vikings maybe move up 2 spots because that would be a pretty good feat, especially against teams that are favored to play in the state in Heritage and played in the state last year in Brookstone.
Well, the Central Lady Red Devils, coached by first-year Coach Regetta Williams, they had a tough schedule. They played a lot of Christmas tournaments, played a lot of top seeds in the state of Alabama. So their 14-9 record is because they've played tough opponents. But we all know about Jabria Lindsay and what she has done here in the Tri-City area. I mean, she really is just a phenomenal player, one of the best players to ever come out of the Tri-City area. And it's really that name factor, because we talk about, when we do these rankings, we talk about talent. Well, Central can rank with just about anybody. I mean, Auburn is one of the top teams in 7A, and they split with them, and they beat Smith Station. And I think that Central can make a deep run in the 7A playoffs. It just, when you look at the teams that are ranked 1 through 4, I think they got an easier path to a state championship.
From number 5, obviously Jabria Lindsay will be the X factor in that. They did lose to the Auburn girls at
They
home,
did.
which was a big blow.
They actually won at Auburn.
And then they lost at home. But obviously those two are the favorites to win Area 4. And then, Jabria Central and Rogetta Williams will be in the Elite 8 Final Four around that area. And just like last year with the boys, if a player gets hot like Jacoby Hill did, maybe Jabria Lindsay is that player, they can carry a team all the way to the state championship. We've seen it done before.
Oh, no
Number
doubt.
4, the Glenwood Gators, the favorite to win the AISA. They're on like a 12-game winning streak, 21-5. The TK Davis, Anna Grace Griggs, the power forward and center. That tandem's just lethal. Griggs, and I mean, they're on the same page. Great high-low action. Palmore's been a great point guard who doesn't score a lot but doesn't need to because she's a facilitator.
Right.
She is the floor general. She is just like another version of Coach Purdue, his extension on the court. And the Gators are ranked number 1 in every poll out there when it comes to AISA, and they're number 4 for us. And I like the Gators winning it all this year. Coach Purdue's got a great girls program, 21-5. They come in at number 4. Number 3, Richard.
Harris County. I mean, what can you say about the Harris County Lady Tigers,
Woo.
coached by Coach Stephanie Ramsey Dunn, and really the three-headed trio of Brooke Bass, Alana Coulter, and Janiyah Broom. They all three put up 20 points or more in that win over Shaw on Saturday. And get this, Thrift, they're 16-2, but their 2 losses are to Carver and Hardaway. And when we talk about these rankings, because they're one of the top teams in 5A, and I think they can make a deep run in the 5A playoffs, we also have to factor in head-to-head, which leads to the next 2 teams that are in our rankings.
Which number 2, who beat Harris County, and we were at that game back in December, the Carver Lady Tigers, who got a big win against Monroe. Both teams were undefeated. Monroe, by the way, Richard, that freshman girl by the name of...
Yeah, Keandria Acree, who
she
had 32 points. I mean, just incredible game. One of the top freshmen in the state.
In the country.
In the country.
And the country. And she will be a name you hear a lot. But 4-0 in the region are the Carver Lady Tigers, beat Monroe, now 12-6.
I do want to say congratulations to Jasmine Thornton for getting her 1,500th career point as they stopped play. She took pictures with her family, and I love it when we get to live stream these games and we get to see these milestones that these players accomplish.
And they play Daughtery upcoming. That's a bigger game, I think, for the boys than it is for the girls. But I think the Carver Lady Tigers, Chubb Williams and Aubrey Wilkins, that dynamic duo, point guard, shooting guard. I mean, either one of them, I just call them guards. They really don't, not a point or a shooting guard, because they can play either position. They had great games. Thornton, as you mentioned. And Coach Huntley, he's got a deep bench. He's putting in players that come in and hit big-time shots. Jasmine Thornton, who's putting up 17 a game. Wilkins at 15. Then Chubb Williams at about a 6.5. She also averages about 4.3 steals a game.
She had about 7 steals in that game.
Yeah. But Wilkins and Thornton, Williams, and then Cam Thomas. She hit some big-time shots. Cooper came down the stretch hitting big-time shots. So I like what I'm seeing from the Carver Lady Tigers. They've had a tough schedule. That's why they got 6 losses. But they're the number 2 team. And the number 1 team, Richard, who have just been on a tear lately. I saw Kelly Ellison. I was telling her I'm so proud of the way her Hardaway Lady Hawks are playing. They're 15-4. They're lost to River Ridge, Union Grove, Cross Creek, and Norcross. Since starting the season, 3-4, Richard. They have now won 12 straight games. And majority of those games, including Carver and the Muskogee County Christmas Tournament Championship, they've won, actually every game in there, they've won by 10 points or more. So they're dominating everybody in front of them. They dominated Harris County where they faced them. They're 15-4, 15-4 on the season. They play Russell County. They're going to dominate. They're going to dominate Northside. They've already beat Westover. I'm looking at their schedule. They're going to be 21-4. They're probably going to win their region tournament, and they're going to be the number 1 seed and the favorite, I think, in 4A to win it all. How about the Lady Hawks playing excellent basketball, led by Michaela Johnson with 19.1 a game, Akilah Shelton 13. I mean, those 2 girls are great. Adasia Burrell, who's coming back from injury. She's putting up 5.7 and 5 assists a game. Then you got Hardy and Meeks and Boynton. I mean, they got a deep bench, Richard, and I like this team a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same team that went to the Final Four last year. And you got to look at the schedule. I think that Hardaway is going to win out. They're going to host a region tournament. And they're going to – well, actually, I heard it's going to be at the boys' site. But they'll get to host the first couple of rounds in the region tournament, get a number 1 seed, and run the table in the state playoffs. And we expect the Hardaway Lady Hawks to make a deep run in the state playoffs.
Michaela Johnson averaging 25 a game during region play. And
incredible.
Lady Hawks 4-0, and they take on Russell County. They're the number 1 team in our rankings. All right, let's move on now to the boys' side. Georgia Alabama Sports Live boys bracket. And let's look at this. And by the way, when I'm looking at these rankings, and we didn't swap it, and honestly, we probably should have. Number 10 is Brookstone. They're 12-7. They take on Pacelli. And Coach Ivy's team has done a really good job here down the stretch of getting above 500. Looking at the 4A, they could probably host a playoff game in that first round and maybe make it to the Elite Eight. Remember last year they lost to Pacelli in the Elite Eight. They're 3-1 in the region, and their only loss in the region is to Heritage.
Right.
They beat Strong Rock at Strong Rock. They also beat Kendrick and Westfield. And by the way, Strong Rock's 15-2. So I think it's Pacelli, Heritage, and then Brookstone as the 1, 2, and 3. They beat St. Mary's. They take on Pacelli, but they're number 10. Obviously, if they got an upset against Pacelli, you got to start putting them up in the rankings. But
will.
Coach Ivy, I really thought this team was going to take a step back from last year, make it to the Elite Eight. I think they're even with them, or maybe a little bit better than last year's team, 12-7 coming in at number 10. Number 9, though, Richard. A team that honestly could be up higher because they did beat Hardaway at home by 2.
Right.
They just took care of business against Harris County, and looking at their record right now, they're 11-9 on the season. They're in the region, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're the 3 seed right now.
They are.
But the Shaw Raiders at number 9. Them, Hardaway, Columbus, those 3 are interchangeable. Honestly, I wouldn't even put numbers by them. I'd say they're all 7A, 7B, 7C, because those could be interchangeable. But what do you got about the Shaw Raiders?
Well, they did lose to Westover Friday night at home. Westover is undefeated in the region. But it's just going to be battling to try to get in the playoffs, because right now, with their record, Hardaway, they have 1 region win because they defeated Bainbridge on the road, and Shaw beat Hardaway at Shaw, and then Hardaway has to play Shaw on February the 2nd, so that could determine who gets like the 3 seed.
And listen to this. Bainbridge, Hardaway, Cairo, throw out Westover at home, but Bainbridge, Hardaway, Cairo, those 3. I'm willing to bet, if I looked at the other schedules too, Hardaway had a close loss to Bainbridge and Cairo. Shaw lost to Bainbridge and Cairo by 6 and 2, beat Hardaway by 1 in overtime. All 3 of those teams could be interchangeable, but here's the problem, Richard. One of them is not going to make the playoffs this year, which is, for the Shaw basketball team, who I like a lot, right now they're on the outside. Them and Hardaway and Bainbridge are tied for, it's Cairo 3-1, Westover 4-0, and then Bainbridge, Hardaway, and Shaw all tied at 1-3. One of those teams are not going to make it. And I would hate I want Hardaway and Shaw both to make it and not Bainbridge, obviously, for who we cover. But that's going to be tough, man, especially when Hardaway and Shaw both have lost at Bainbridge this year. They still got to play them at home, and Westover right now looks like the best team in the region. But if you look at their overall rankings, 10-7 Westover, 11-8 Cairo, 10-8 Bainbridge, 11-8 Hardaway, 10-9 Shaw. So all 5 of those teams, they're pretty much similar, and they're all in the same. Westover right now looks like to be the best team, but you never know, especially Cairo. They've won a couple of games over Hardaway and Shaw by 1 or 2 points. So those games could be flip-flopped when they go on the road to Hardaway and Shaw and lose them. And then we're talking about a whole different set of rankings in their region.
And even though it's a non-region game, Cairo beat Spencer on Saturday. But you talk about this Shaw team. They're a different team with Dorian Head running the point.
Yes.
He was injured in the Muskogee County
They
Christmas
need him.
tournament. They need Dorian Head, Josiah Williams. Those are your two top scorers.
Yeah.
But you get somebody like Matthew Lewis that can shoot the three. I think what Coach Dickey has got, he's got a good team. They made the playoffs last year. And right now, they're just hoping to just get into the playoffs, and they just need some help. I mean, that game on February the 2nd is going to be huge for either Shaw or Hardaway.
And by the way, I saw someone, Adam Denson, comments, ref influenced Shaw Cairo game. I've seen a lot of referees influence a lot of teams around this Columbus area when we go on the road. I don't know if it's respect that we don't get outside of here, or people just hate Columbus teams and Tri-City area teams, and they try to take it to us when we go on the road, because officiating against the teams that we cover, it's always been bad on the road. Trust me, when I go with Pacelli or Glenwood or anyone else, it is really bad how much they can influence. But Shaw's got a big game against Bainbridge. If they beat Bainbridge, they're right back now in the thick of things, and they would technically be the number 3 seed.
Right.
Then they got at Hardaway, Cairo, and at Westover. Those are big games for Shaw. All right, from Shaw to Hardaway, who's 11-8 coming in. Coach Kendall Mills' program 1-3 in the region as well. Their one win was at Bainbridge. So Shaw lost to Bainbridge, Hardaway lost to Shaw, and then Bainbridge lost to Hardaway. Their losses this year, looking at they've lost to Cairo by 1, Westover by 3 at home, and Shaw by 1. So they started 0-3, beat Bainbridge. They got Russell County. That's a non-factor game along with Northside. But they got Cairo at home, Shaw at home, at Westover, and Bainbridge at home. If they can win 3 of those 4 games, you're talking about maybe being the number 2 seed, especially if Shaw can upset Cairo, Bainbridge can beat Cairo. Hardaway could be in there. And I like this Hardaway team. Makai Benton, Lamel Mims, who's the leading scorer, Antonio Dortch, 11.1 a game. And then you got John Kyle, Zaire Hodge, Brown, Fudge, Long, all these guys. They're a deep, senior-led team. And I know Coach Mills does not want to waste a team like this, not making the playoffs. Big win, though, at Bainbridge, and hopefully that puts them and catapults them maybe to, I don't know if win the region, but be one of the top seeds in the region.
Well, you look at a tough 1-point road loss to Cairo. They're going to host Cairo at Hardaway.
And they're going to want that bad.
They're going to want that bad. But that Westover game, Westover's undefeated in the region. They lost to Westover on a buzzer beater at home.
Unbelievable.
So it was, it could have gone either way. And they know that the margin of error in this region is minimal because these games are coming down to the last possession. And Hardaway's got the team to win all their region games. They're all out in front of them, and the playoffs is within reach. But I just think with Westover being undefeated, they're starting to play with some confidence, and they could just continue winning. It looks like that they'll win the region, but Hardaway can try to get the number 2 seed, and that means hosting a playoff game in the first round.
13-6 on the season is the Columbus Blue Devils, who come in at number 7. I would say one of the surprise teams in our area. They're 4th in their region because Monroe and Daugherty and Carver are the top 3. Obviously, we know how good Carver and Daugherty are, and Monroe. But Columbus get big wins, even albeit one of them, I think both are on the road.
They beat Thomasville on the road, and they beat Crisp County at home.
And I expect them to continue to beat. Both those programs are not very good. But Columbus can make the playoffs for the first time in a long time. They're 13-6. I see them being looking at their schedule and who they have
Tough one this week.
Yeah, they do got a tough one. And looking at their schedule, they have to play, obviously, at Monroe and at Carver. Those are tough. Daugherty at home, Thomasville, Crisp, and Monroe. If they beat Thomasville and Crisp and they say they'll lose the other games, they'll finish 15-10. They'll still be the number 4 seed, and they'll still make the playoffs, which I think is a big factor. Robert Harford, who's also the starting quarterback, 14 points a game. Oakley Coots, who is a block machine. He's putting up 7 and about 10 with about 3 or 4 blocks. And maybe they could upset Daugherty at home, too. And who knows, make some noise, and maybe they could be I think Carver and Monroe are 1 and 2, but maybe they could be the 3 seed. But Columbus High, 13-6, they come in at number 7. All right, from Columbus to now number 6, Russell County. The Warriors, 14-6 on the season. And I know you're really high on this Russell County team. Coach Battle, from last year, losing record to this year, maybe winning 20 games.
Well, it looks like Russell County might make the playoffs. They've beaten Pike Road twice. They lost to Park Crossing, but Park Crossing's undefeated in the region. They actually play Park Crossing tomorrow. It's a makeup game.
And by the way, their area only has 3 teams, and only 2 of them get to make it, or all 3?
I want to say 2 of them only make the playoff, but you have the region tournament. I'm going to say 2 of them have to make the playoffs, but yeah, it's very difficult to be in a region with just 3 teams, and really. The team that wins the region makes the playoffs, and then you have an at-large bid. And so the second place team might get in the playoffs. It just depends how many at-large bids are out there. It's kind of like, the tournament at like the collegiate level. That's how the playoffs are set up there. But 14-6,
yeah.
I'm impressed with their record and what Coach Ronnie Battle is doing. I've seen improvement with the Russell County Warriors as they were on the doorstep of the playoffs the last 2 seasons. Timothy Littleton Jr., I mean, what can you say about a player? With his talent, he likes to shoot from the outside. He can guard. He can dribble, pass. He's got all the skills. And looking forward to seeing them play Hardaway. I think that's going to be a great matchup.
So they have Hardaway and Parks Crossing at home this week. They win both those. They'll go to 16-6. They end the season against Central. We'll be there for that one. Excuse me, the 30th. And then they take on at Valley and at Eufaula, both really good programs. Valley won the state last
title
year.
Contenders.
So even if they
5A.
lose those games, though, either one of those teams are in 6A. I think Eufaula is in 6A.
Valley and Eufaula are both in 5A.
5A, excuse me. So Russell County, those are games just hopefully to get you ready for the playoffs. But Russell County Warriors 14-6. We can't wait to do that game against Russell County on the 30th. That's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's hit our top 5. Number 5, Gators, 19-7. And Coach Purdue's team, who got a win against Macon East, losing at home against Springwood, who now Springwood, Valiant Cross, Lee Scott, Glenwood, and Bessemer. Those are the 5 teams that could win the AISA. Glenwood is no longer the favorite, Richard. They lost to Valiant Cross, also beat them. They lost to Springwood. They've lost to Lee Scott, and they didn't play Bessemer. So they wouldn't be the favorite to win it all this year. They're 19-7. They got a big one this week. If they go on the road and beat Springwood on Tuesday and beat Lee Scott on Thursday, those are the last 2 games of the season. We're talking about now you start putting them as in one of the favorites. So big week this week for the Glenwood Gators, coming in at 19-7, who came up short against Springwood. They were up by 20, ended up blowing that. They were down by 20, came back, ended up losing in overtime.
Yeah, they're hoping to win out, try to get a good showing in the AISA region tournament and get ready for the AISA state playoffs, and hopefully have the run that they had last season. No one expected them to win the state championship last year, and they just went on a run.
They were the favorites. I mean, they were the underdogs last year for sure. The Spencer Greenways come in at number 4, 14-2, undefeated in region play. They're going to probably finish undefeated in region play. They did just lose to 4A Cairo on the road by 1. I mean, Cairo's beating Hardaway, Shaw, and now Spencer, all at home, all by 1 to 2 points. I mean, you're talking about the luck of the luck for Cairo.
Hey, what's it with these Albany teams? Just like in football, they end up beating all the teams in Columbus. I mean, because Westover beat Spencer in football. I mean, Cairo beat Spencer in basketball. It's just the luck of being down in Albany. But I still believe that this Spencer team, they've got some great players. They're led by Gary Gaither, Keyshawn Sampton.
Yeah, Gary
Joe
Gaither,
Joser,
who obviously came in as the leading scorer from last year's team. Sampton, though, who put on a show and put up 20 points, over 20 points in that Christmas tournament. He's been really been the go-to guy. Joe Dozier's been great. Horn and Duncan. 14-2. Sandy Spill has them ranked in the top 6. And they're undefeated in region play. Looking this upcoming week, they got Kendrick and Rutland and then Jordan. We'll be there when they take on Southwest, because that's going to be to see who's going to win the region, as Southwest is 5-0. So they'll both probably be undefeated in region play when we see that game here in a few weeks. For the Green Waves, coming in at number 4, Coach Quintavious Allen has a team again. If you look at Spencer over the last 5 years, some of those being coached by Pembroke, some of those being coached by Coach Quintavious Allen. Either way, they made it Elite 8, Final 4, state championship, and I expect nothing different with this year's team. All right, number 3, the Carver Tigers. as they came up short against Monroe. It was really one of their first tests against a team ranked in 3A, top 3. I mean, also they played Spencer, who's ranked in 2A, so that was a big win. They did beat Shaw. Shaw is not ranked in 4A, but that was a good win for them. But aside from that, they haven't faced really any teams this year that have been top 5 caliber in their classification. This was the first one, and they came up short. A lot of turnovers, a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes from a Pembroke-led team. And Justin Burns and the long length of Monroe was just too much. This doesn't say that the Carver Tigers, their goal is win a state championship, win the region. It's still right there in front of them. I know they lost. I know that's the story right now. Carver's not undefeated anymore, but I didn't think they were going to go undefeated anyway. That's a tough task to do, especially with a team that doesn't have any seniors. So Carver losing to Monroe, maybe they use that as motivation on what things to improve. Now Coach Pembroke can say, hey, this is what happens if you don't listen to me and you don't do what I ask. This could happen. We can lose games. And now maybe they get their get back at Monroe, but they come in at number 3.
What an incredible turnaround by the Carver Tigers, only winning 6 games last year. And I think that winning the region tournament, a game against Thomasville, and snatching the number 4 seed in the state playoffs last year got them some momentum. And really the addition of Tony Montgomery coming over from Spencer and having just a tremendous impact, averaging over 20 points a game. He is their instant offense. But getting just scoring from Champ Simpson and then the blocking capabilities of Tobias Tolber. He's averaging 3.5 blocks a game. Ace Thomas is only a freshman. He's been hitting some big shots. I like what Carver's doing. They do have a big road game against Daughtry. And then on Friday, taking on Columbus. Columbus played Carver tough. I mean, that game was at Columbus, but that was a very close game. And then I expect Crisp County, that game, that they should win that game. And
yeah.
I think that right now, if you look at the region, Monroe is the favorite to win the region, but Daughtry is at 3-1. So this Tuesday matchup against Daughtry is a very big game.
And it could tell who's going to be the number 2 seed.
Exactly.
No doubt about it. All right, the last two. Central coming in at number 2. They took care of business, beat Auburn by double digits. Jacoby Hill and Bryce Dawson, they're starting to come into their own. Huntsville, though, and Hoover are the favorites to win in 7A. But you never know. They could pull an upset. They did lose to Huntsville. Huntsville's only got 1 loss all season long. But the Central Red Devils come in at number 2. And I think Jacoby Hill and them are between them, Hoover, and Huntsville to win it all this year. And throw Auburn in there, too. But number 1, the Pacelli Vikings. Them and Central about 1A, 1B. But the Vikings, another big win against Douglas County. They got a big week this week. They take on Heritage and Brookstone. Then they got Baldwin on Saturday. So big games coming up for Pacelli still. But the schedule they played, and they're doing this now without Jadance Ford. Once they get him back in their deep bench, I like Pacelli a lot. So any final thoughts on Central Pacelli? I'd put them as a favorite against anybody on this list, both those teams. But last thoughts, Richard, so we can talk a little college basketball and get out of here.
Well, the reason why we put Pacelli number 1, obviously because of the schedule they've faced and all the tough teams that they've played.
They almost beat, and they could have beat Sandy Creek, who's one of the top teams in the state.
And Central is right there because they've had a tough schedule, but they did lose to Auburn up in Auburn, but they avenged that loss by getting the win over Auburn. They still face Opelika, Smith Station, Russell County. They play Fairfield. I think what Coach Burkhead has, this is a team, still a young team, that went to the state championship last year. I think that they're poised to do it again, especially with players like Bryce Dawson, Jacoby Hill, and Willie Townsend. I mean, they've got great players, great skill players that could get the job done. They play good defense, and they're battle tested because of the opponents they faced in 7A.
Same with Pacelli, and that's why when you have Jadance Ford go out, put up 20 a game, one of the top players in the country, in the state, and you replace him with a Christian Brown or a Deuce Moore or Trenton Latham, you're getting these guys valuable minutes against good opponents like Douglas County on the road that can prepare you for that championship game that's going to be held at Columbus State, by the way.
Can't wait for that.
By the way, your play-by-play announcer for the GIAA Basketball State Championships, myself, and looking forward to it. I expect, Richard, you'll be a part of those broadcasts. Of course, Chris and Toygar. Thank you to Brett Taylor allowing me the opportunity to do the football state championships now. Get to be in my hometown at my alma mater in Columbus State. Call some basketball games. Already did the Christmas tournament, so that should be a lot of fun. All right, real quickly, some college basketball, and we'll get out of here. And we haven't put up the schedule yet because we technically don't really know where we're going to be. We know a little bit, but let's first talk about college basketball. Auburn Tigers, I told you, Richard, smacked Ole Miss this past weekend. Tennessee beat Alabama, so now Auburn's the only undefeated team in the SEC when it comes to SEC play. They're not undefeated overall, but at SEC play they are. Tennessee and Kentucky, they're the top 10 teams, but I'd put on a neutral court, I'd take Auburn over almost anybody. I know Purdue's the number one, UConn's the number one team, then you got Purdue, but I think it's up for grabs, man. I really, if you were to say who would you put your money on, I don't know if I would pick a team. And Auburn would be one of those teams that I may put my money on. But really good basketball from them. I know Georgia and Alabama both lost. Alabama's going to make the NCAA tournament. Auburn and Alabama play each other at Alabama. Big test for Auburn on Wednesday. And Alabama wins that. They're right back in the driver's seat. But Georgia, they're going to have to make an upset or two because right now they're on the outside looking in, make the NCAA tournament. Any thoughts on that, Richard?
Yeah, Georgia's not even listed as a bubble team.
No.
But I think that this is going to be the biggest test for Auburn to go in a hostile environment and play a rival in Alabama at Coleman Coliseum. If that hostile crowd, and yes, there are Alabama basketball fans that pack Coleman Coliseum. I've been there before, but it was in November and no one was there because they were, focused on college football. But, this rivalry, it's not just a rivalry of football. It's a rivalry in other sports. And this is going to be a huge game, televised on ESPN. And Auburn is going to have a test because what Nate Oates has, he has a very good team. Remember, Alabama was the overall number one seed last year.
Yeah.
And, they had Brandon Miller, and with everything that was going on with that, they still have a good team. And they would love nothing better than to beat Auburn, their most hated rival, on their home court and have their fans storm the court. But, yeah, Auburn's playing on another level. They just smacked Ole Miss in the mouth. And, you look at the upcoming schedule. They got Kentucky. They got some big games. And I think that Auburn, what Bruce Pearl has got, they got a lot of depth. I rival this Auburn team to that Final Four team in 2019. I think that they're on that level.
And this team is just as deep as that team was. Kansas got upset by West Virginia. We see a lot of upsets.
Yeah,
UConn did win both games, so they're still going to be ranked number one. Purdue, Zach Edey put up 30 and 13 this past weekend. North Carolina, they're undefeated in ACC play. Duke just lost again the Pitt. But UNC, Purdue, UConn, Auburn, all those teams are still undefeated in their conference play in the Power Five. Illini, and I like Illinois, and I like Brad Underwood, and I like Illinois, and I think the Illini are going to be a team that could make a Final Four run. There's a story out there about Terrence Shannon. I don't want to get into it. I want you to go look it up. Right now, he's being charged with rape, but there's a lot of stuff happening with that, and it dealt with something that during football season when Illinois played Kansas at Kansas. But a judge put a restraining order on the Big Ten and the Illini saying that right now Terrence Shannon can play until after the court proceedings. Well, obviously, he's not going to know his fate until after the season. So this year he could really mess up the Illini. So they're allowing him now to come back and play after missing many games. With them playing, he puts up 20 a game. You put him as a Texas Tech transfer back with this Illinois team, they could be a team that can make a run. Arizona is pretty good out in the Pac-12. That's having a little bit of down year this year. Looking at the Pac-12, Arizona, Oregon, both those teams are pretty good. Arizona 1-2 straight. Caleb Love, the North Carolina product, plays for them. But like I said, really up for grabs. We'll start going heavy into, college basketball as February comes around. Right now, I still like when you're only playing 5 or 6 conference plays. There could be some fraudulent teams out there, so not ready for that. But excited, though, to see what's coming up. This week, we got Sports Vision's show on Monday, 4 to 6 p.m. Listen to that. You got Sports Beat also. Make sure to tune in with Richard Holdridge, Sports Beat with him. Tuesday, we have Brooks on Pacelli, maybe Russell County Hardaway, but it looks like we're probably going to be only at Brookstone Pacelli. Then on Wednesday, we got the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. Bobby Z is going to be joining us. Thursday, a lot happening. Glenwood Lee Scott. We got a doubleheader at CV, and we can't wait to do those two matchups. Friday, Carver Columbus. Saturday, it's been up in the air where we may be. We may not even be doing a game that day. Then nothing on Sunday except for our show. And then next week after, we got Glenwood in the region tournament. We got other great region games around the area. We're going to be at Hardaway. We're going to be at Shaw. So stay tuned. Great games coming up. We'll put out the schedule, so make sure to go like it. Any other final thoughts, Richard, before we get out of here?
Thrift is a great show. I can't wait for Wednesday's show to talk about Bobby Z, because I know that we got a little conference championship to talk about.
Yeah, but we're not talking NFL right now.
Not today, but we're going to save it for Wednesday. Because right now the Bills are playing the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Bills are playing the Chiefs. Congratulations to the Lions. I'm glad they made it. Dan Campbell, he's going to eat somebody's knee. It's about to be halftime, by the way. The Chiefs beating the Bills by 3. So we're going to head home and watch the rest of that one. But thank you so much to Roger Beck and the Beck Center for allowing us to be here. Thank you for supporting us. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsors that help allow us to be at all these places and live stream these games. And we'll see you here on Wednesday. Actually, we'll see you on Tuesday for Brookstone Pacelli. And got a great week of basketball for you on Georgia, Alabama Sports Live. Stay classy. Be safe. We'll see you later.